They laughed when they saw the old woman sitting quietly in the recruit waiting room. A faded gray coat, an ancient badge no one could name. They called her a ghost, a lost old lady. But just minutes later, a general walked in, saw her, and the whole room fell silent, not because of her age, but because of the truth, returning in the form of someone history had tried to erase. This is no fiction. This is the story of Clara Baines, a woman who once carried life and death coordinates on her shoulders, then was erased as if she never existed, and now you're about to witness it all. Welcome to our channel. Before we dive into this powerful story, let me know in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you think stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button to support us. Saturday morning, thin sunlight slanted through the old maple trees at the edge of Fort Wexley, Colorado, painting the concrete steps in a soft, quiet gold. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine resin mixed with dry earth. Inside the recruit reception's waiting room, worn leather chairs and a silver sign reflected faint light. Young soldiers, hair still sharp with antiseptic, uniforms unwrinkled by sweat, clustered in groups, their chatter buzzing. Laughter broke out in short, crisp bursts, dry and slightly sharp. In the deepest corner, beneath a rattling air conditioner, an elderly woman sat alone. She looked at no one, and no one truly looked at her. She wore a faded gray coat, its collar worn, sleeves frayed to the stitching. But what drew a few glances was the patch carefully sewn on her left sleeve, an old fabric badge, a diving eagle, claws clutching a red lightning bolt. Below it, 4 strange silent letters, O-D-S-R. For a moment, no one spoke. Then a laugh erupted near the vending machines. "Yo, you see that some granny's cosplaying a retired agent?" A tall, red-haired soldier, broad-shouldered with a backpack bigger than his frame, stepped closer. His name tag read Vickers. He grinned, not quite cruel, but enough to spread the mood. "Sorry, ma'am. This is the recruit waiting room, not a public bus stop." A few others chuckled. Someone faked a cough to hide a smirk. Clara Baines sat still, hands clasped in her lap, back straight, eyes fixed on her darkened black shoes. She didn't react, didn't frown, didn't turn, as if she'd heard it 100 times, as if it was never worth her breath. Vickers raised an eyebrow and cleared his throat louder. "You hear me, nice coat? Bet you got it at a thrift store from World War II. Nothing changed, but up close." He started to notice something, not on the coat, but in the dim light of the old woman's eyes. Eyes were cloudy like aged glass, but deep, so deep and utterly still, behind her. A framed photo hung on the wall. General Theodore Nance, commander of Operation Atlas, shaking hands with soldiers after the Carmel battle. Someone muttered, "Man, look at her posture, like she was in that picture or something." But the whispers didn't spread far before the door swung open again. A man stepped in, slow, deliberate, dress uniform, white gloves, silver hair cropped short, one leg slightly limping. General Thomas Halbrook. He was only there to inspect the recruits before leaving the base. But as he neared the room's center, his gaze stopped, and it stopped on one thing. He didn't look at anyone, didn't greet anyone, just stared at the faded coat and the eagle badge on her left sleeve. His eyes locked on it, as if he'd seen something that shouldn't be here. 1 second, 2 seconds. Then he spoke, slow but clear. "Ma'am, where did you get that coat?" The room went dead silent. No one dared laugh. No one moved. Vickers stepped back half a pace, uneasy, Clara said nothing. She only raised her head. Slowly. Her eyes were still cloudy, but her gaze was steady. The general stepped closer, his voice lower. "Were you with O.D.S.R.?" Clara nodded faintly. Barely. Once. In that brief moment, the air seemed to sink. The young soldier shrank between the two old figures, locking eyes. General Halbrook turned. His eyes weren't kind anymore. His voice rang out. Firm. Everyone, out. No one dared question. No one dared argue. Hesitant footsteps echoed. Then the door closed behind them. The waiting room now held only two, a general nearing retirement, and a woman in a worn coat, once mocked as a ghost in broad daylight. But now, his eyes didn't see a stranger. He looked at her as if he'd just found a piece of memory he thought was lost 40 years ago. And that memory was sitting right in front of him. Silent. And still alive, in the quiet of the room, now holding just the two of them. General Halbrook stood, his hand tightening slightly at his side, as if holding back something unspoken. He looked at the woman before him, then slowly sat in the chair across from her, close enough to see every frayed thread on her sleeve. He breathed slowly. Then his voice dropped, almost a whisper. "We were told the silent Raptor unit was wiped out. Spring of 1979, northern Tehran border." Clara met his eyes, unflinching. "I believed that, too." He leaned forward slightly. "I heard the name once. Operation Dagger Silent Raptor. But the files were sealed. Years later, all that remained was a 2-page report. 52 people, no survivors." Clara closed her eyes briefly, then opened them. She spoke in a slow, dry voice, each word landing like stone. "That year, I was the only one without a weapon." He went silent. Even the air conditioner seemed to hold its breath. "I joined the unit in 1978. No one thought I'd last. The only woman, a field medic, and the only one who spoke Farsi." Her voice was steady, no need for emphasis, the truth heavy enough. "I was embedded at the northern border, carrying a shortwave transmitter. My sole mission pinpoint the coordinates for the extraction target. If I sent the signal, the team would have a way out." General Halbrook froze. He'd heard of such covert operations, but never imagined the person sitting before him was one of its linchpins. "Did you do it?" Clara nodded faintly. "Sent the signal at 02:43, rain, very cold. Then I was found. They held me. No questions, no interrogation, just held." She paused, her hands clenching tightly. 14 months. He looked up, the corners of his eyes reddening, whether from emotion or something heavier. "How did you get back month 15? "A prisoner exchange. I was taken to Fort Denson's medical base in Oregon, but my name wasn't in the system. No ID code, no unit record. I came back, but I didn't belong anywhere." She gave a faint smile, not mocking, just gazing at a memory long dried. "I spoke up. No one listened, so I stopped talking." A long silence stretched. Then General Halbrook stood, said nothing. He adjusted his uniform, stepped back, and suddenly raised his hand in a crisp military salute. His right hand was directed straight at Clara. Firm, solemn, not for rank. Clara didn't return the gesture. She only looked up at him, her cloudy eyes steady as steel. In the worn room, under the pale late morning light, something shifted. No one else needed to see. No cameras, no documents. Because some truths only need one person to remember, and one to believe. A week later, Saturday morning returned to Fort Wexley with gentle breezes and cold sunlight creeping across the old concrete buildings. Bus number 3 stopped at the South Gate station, as it did every weekend. Clara Baines stepped off, her faded gray coat still clinging to her slight frame, her worn black shoes holding their shape with each careful step. No one accompanied her. No one helped her down the steps. But this time, as she approached the glass door of the reception center, the scene ahead was different. No laughter, no prying eyes. At the entrance to the waiting room, where mockery had filled the air a week before, a straight line of recruits now stood, shoulders squared, eyes forward, silent. At the center, Vickers, the one who'd first taunted her, held a simple bouquet and a neatly folded triangular flag. His uniform was crisp, his hands trembling slightly, not from fear but from something deeper, truer. Clara stopped. The air was strangely still. Wind slipped through her coat, threading between the gaps of those standing there. Then Vickers took a step forward. His voice wasn't loud, but it reached everyone present. We didn't know. We really didn't know. His eyes reddened, his grip on the flag tightening. "I'm sorry, ma'am." Clara didn't respond. She didn't take the flag or the flowers. She just stood, her gaze calm as a winter lake. But slowly, a faint smile touched the corner of her lips. The first smile since she'd set foot back on this base. Not grand, not loud, but clear, like a statement. Behind the line of recruits, on the gray brick wall once covered only with recruitment slogans, a large framed photo now hung. In it, a young woman, hair tied back, face tanned, eyes bright but far from naive, tactical vest. On her sleeve, the Diving Eagle badge with its red lightning bolt. Below the frame, a short inscription in plain black text. "No flourish, Clara Baines, Operation Silent Raptor." Served in silence, courage beyond record. No one spoke. No one needed to. Every person in the room looked at the photo, then at the woman standing before them. Not a legend, not a character in a book, but the truth, alive. And once quietly seated in the last chair, waiting for what no one cared to recall. When Clara stepped inside, no one stopped her, no one followed. But every eye behind her traced her small, unyielding figure as she moved through the room, as if, at last, the room remembered who belonged to it. In a world loud with declarations today, honor came in silence, just as she had lived for half her life. Since that morning, Clara returned to Fort Wexley every weekend. Not for ceremonies, not to speak with anyone. She took the same old number 3 bus, sitting by the door, hands resting on her cane. The faded gray coat still clung to her, though a small tear had grown at the cuff. But each time she arrived, the base's air shifted slightly. The gate guard nodded in greeting. Recruits stepped aside as she passed, not out of duty, but from something untaught in training manuals, respect for someone history had overlooked. They no longer called her old lady or whispered jokes. They knew now, knew that behind a silver-haired, frail figure were years that, if they'd lived them, they might only survive once. Then, one cold Saturday morning, drizzle blurring the bus windows, Clara arrived earlier than usual. As she stepped into the reception hall, something was different. On the front desk, beside the roster and duty schedule, sat a small box wrapped in black cloth, its lid embroidered with a diving eagle. No one said who placed it there. No one claimed it. Clara glanced at it briefly, then walked on, as if understanding that some apologies only needed to be seen. The next week, a new hallway opened in the base's eastern memorial wing. Not long, not grand, but on its white wall, among badges of lost units. A small line was added in glare-proof ink, catching the morning sun through the window. ODSR, Operation Dagger Silent Raptor, Unacknowledged Special Forces Active 1977-1979. Below, a faint note, almost a whisper. Their names are not in official records. But their courage is... Slowly, pieces of a faded memory were stitched back together, not in order. Not through headlines, but through young soldiers asking questions, and old ones like Clara nodding in reply. When Vickers was promoted to squad instructor, his first act wasn't to revise lesson plans. It was to mandate a new session, Unnamed Operations in U.S. Military History. In the first class, as recruits flipped through textbooks, Vickers projected a photo of a wall frame showing a young woman, eyes unwavering. "Her name won't be in your books," he said slowly. "But she saved a unit. She was once dismissed as irrelevant, unworthy, until we all had to stand silent and look at ourselves." Clara's story never made the news. It didn't appear in the commander's speeches, but every weekend, as she entered the waiting room, eyes followed, not from curiosity, but because they knew they were seeing a piece of history nearly lost. And in that room, her smile appeared, faint, rare, but enough to burn into those who saw it. For some heroes don't step onto podiums, they simply pass through our lives quietly, but unerasable. No one really knew where Clara lived. No one asked. They only saw her come and go on weekend mornings, punctual, steady, never missing a beat. She didn't say much, but her silence made others think. Senior officers began mentioning her name in closed meetings. Old reports were requested again. Files once obscured were unsealed, line by line, piece by piece, name by name. But some names were still missing, not erased, but never written. And among them were people like Clara, those who were there, but left no mark, those without medals, but with scars no one saw. Voices in meeting rooms sometimes fell quiet when a young officer asked why were people like her. Unknown to us, the answer was always the same, though unspoken. Because systems don't remember if no one tells the story. But since Clara walked through that door, something shifted. Old photos in the archives were restored. Some were hung again in the hallway. They showed young faces, bright eyes, lips pressed tight, in uniforms without rank. Not all their names were known, but beneath each photo now was a new note, Operation Silent Raptor, honoring those unnamed. During a late-season training, as winds turned and snow dusted the barracks' roofs, a group of recruits was tasked with preparing a real-world scenario map. They chose to recreate the 1979 operation, centering on an unarmed agent using only radio signals to guide the way. The instructor, Vickers himself, didn't need to name the model. Everyone knew. By then, Clara's name was no longer just a name. It had become a symbol. Not of victory, not of strength, but of quiet existence, in an era with no room for the silent. As the year's end passed, the maples around the base turned red, then brown, then fell across the stone steps. Clara still came regularly. Some days, she sat on a bench by the memorial wing, holding a weak coffee from the corner shop. She didn't speak. But her eyes drifted to the hallway with her framed photo, not to reclaim it, but to ensure that memory had a place to stay. A young soldier passed, paused and nodded. No questions, no salute, just a nod, the kind given to someone truly respected. Clara nodded faintly back, then looked away. In her mind, there were no more explosions, no static signals, no ropes or dark cells, only one thing. A line no one recorded, but she always remembered: some wear medals. Some carry scars. Some names are on the walls of honor, some rest only in the worn stitches of a forgotten coat. Clara didn't need to be called a hero, but in the eyes of those who heard her story, she was one. One who passed through unmarked doors, leaving behind something unseen, but felt by all. Even if just once, even if in silence. Clara's story didn't end with a ceremony. No banners, no trumpets, no roaring applause like you'd see at medal presentations. She didn't stand on a stage, didn't speak, didn't return after that late winter morning, but her silence lingered. In the eyes of young soldiers passing the hallway, how a newly promoted officer began asking about names missing from training manuals. And in the slow but unstoppable shift in how people saw those once forgotten. Clara stopped coming on Saturday mornings. The number 3 bus still stopped as always. The window seat stayed empty. But those sitting nearby never took that spot. Not from superstition, not from ritual, but from respect. During a formation review, General Halbrook, now retired, returned to the base as a guest. He didn't go to the main stands. Instead, he stopped at a small memorial area off the center. He stood there a long time, hands clasped behind his back, eyes on Clara's framed photo. Then he pulled a folded paper from his pocket and placed it on the display. No one opened it, but the guard later said, inside was a short line, handwritten, black ink, unsigned. It read some live without needing their names remembered. But we must remember not to repeat that silence. People like Clara are rare, but they're real. They existed among cold concrete walls and silent nights of coded signals in rooms no one questioned and lives no one recorded. They don't need statues, but they deserve to be retold. Because in every community, every family, there's someone like that. Someone who gave a piece of their life, unnoticed. And sometimes, all they need is one person to listen and pass it on. If you've heard this far, if something stirred inside you, don't let it stop. Share this story with someone who hasn't heard it. Keep Clara's name, not just as a person, but as a symbol. Be the reason someone still believes in honor, in humility, in courage, without praise. Because sometimes what changes a generation begins with one person standing up, quietly, and walking through a room where no one knows their name. But they choose to keep going and still believe. If this story touched something deep inside you, take a moment to share it with someone else. Let memories once forgotten live again in a new generation. You can also subscribe to the channel to hear more stories of quiet courage, of honor without spotlights, and of people once seen as small, who left monumental marks. And if you have thoughts after listening, leave a comment below. Just one line is enough to carry a memory forward. Thank you for listening. And thank you for still believing in what's right, even when it comes in silence.